He's such a good dude. Oh, talking to the third person, you, my man, are such a good dude. I love you to bits. 4-time winner at Bathurst. So many records broken. Greg Murphy joins us. Murph, you're already on site on course, mate. So first and foremost, let's talk about the weather, because everyone becomes a meteorologist in the week before Bathurst.
Yeah, there's a massive increase in download of weather apps. There's no question about it. Yeah, most of them all say different things, but it is right now, mate. Just whatever time it is here at Bathurst on the circuit, we're just starting to get some rain. It was 32 degrees when I arrived here yesterday afternoon. Sweltering, beautiful Bathurst weather, and now it's raining, and it's going to increase intensity this afternoon by the looks of it, and then hopefully blow itself out by tomorrow morning, and then we're in for I think some clear days by the sounds of it.
All right, I want to go back to you and all your time, your racing there. I've got so many questions to ask you, but first and foremost, it's got to be who goes in there as the hottest favourites for this weekend?
I don't know if there's one. I mean, the Sandown 500 3 weeks ago was a pretty good guide, I think, for if you were, wanting short odds on someone. Then I think the four cars that actually finished in the top four, which was Win Cup and young Brock Feeney. It was Brodie Kostecki and David Russell. It was Shane Van Gisbergen, Kiwi Richie Stanaway, and then it was Will Brown, Jack Perkins. I think those four cars are going to roll out onto the track in probably pretty good shape. And but that doesn't mean that it's a given by any chance. You know, there's cars that probably didn't perform as good as they would have should have at Sandown, and just with a few changes that's happened to some of the Mustangs over the last little while, it's been a fair bit more talk and chat about that stuff just to try and equalise performance. Depending on the outcome of all that, there's the likes of Cam Waters, James Moffat, also Chaz Mostert as well, and Lee Holdsworth, who I think are just great pairings, and on their day are definitely going to be in with a shot. So it's a little bit wide open. End of Thursday gives you a pretty good fair indicator of who's going to be at the front of the field, I would say.
Greg, how important the co-drivers? I mean, you know, the names that you dropped in there, and I watched Sandown, and I tell you what, I was just so impressed with Win Cup, and I was so impressed with, Tander, obviously, before he went off and that, but I was just so impressed with the old guys, and constant questions around how good are you guys still driving those cars if you had to drive the main stint, for example?
A Jamie Win Cup, no problem. I mean, Jamie seriously could step back into main game tomorrow, and within a very short period of time be back as good as the best he's been. Garth Tander, was really left without a full-time drive and a good team earlier than what he should have. In his participation now in his role that he has with Grove Racing and as a co-driver, he does a brilliant job, and his skills and talents and awareness and past history is well recorded and well deserved. And there's other guys in there too that who are now resigned to the fact that they will be co-drivers, and they put a lot of effort and time into it. But they've got a lot of history in the sport, and it sticks. It doesn't matter that they're a few years older now and they're not doing as much driving. It's just an innate sort of awareness and understanding of what your role is, what your job is, and what you need to do every time you're in the car. Listen, there is a list, and if you're trying to put them in order, there would be an order, because some are just better than others. But getting that pairing right is so critically important. I mean, one was a real standout for me. Actually, was a great performance. Was the Matt Payne, Kevin Estra car, the other Penrite car, run by Grove Racing at Sandown. Young Matty Payne is an absolute star of the future, and he was joined by factory Porsche sports car pilot Kevin Estra, and he has never been to Sandown before. I think he's done one small drive or test in a supercar, and he turned up there and adapted and just proved his status as a world very well respected race car driver. So that was a cool thing to see, and those are the kinds of things that drivers at that level are expected to do.
Bathurst legend Greg Murphy is with us. Of course, Sunday it all goes down. Just quickly on that Tander incident at Sandown, have you ever seen anything as weird and bizarre as a wheel comes off and then hits another guy's, so it knocks a spoiler off the back? I've got to mate, it was just crazy. And every time I looked at it, I was just thinking the odds of that happening must be in the millions.
Yeah. Oh, you try and make that happen again. I mean, wheels coming off is not that unusual. We've seen that happen plenty of times in the past, but to be in the wrong place, have it bounce the way it did, bounce off whatever it hit, and then just happen to come down as poor old James Moffat was driving underneath it and do what it did. I mean, if you were looking for a definition of the word luck, well, then,
there it is.
Or bad luck.
Bad luck.
That was it. Yeah.
These Gen 3 cars, first time that we get to see them at Bathurst, are we going to see anything different from them at that track?
Listen, I think there's a lot of question marks. There's the design of Gen 3 and the philosophy is a big reduction in the aerodynamic downforce of the cars, which comparing, for example, I got to drive at Bathurst last year, and the end of the development cycle of the car of the future. So I got to drive that ZB Commodore around there last year, and I honestly was just blown away by how much speed and stability that car had, because the philosophy of the car was still pretty much what it was when I stopped racing up here in 2014. The philosophy is the same, just the body's a little bit different, but the cars effectively were underneath the body, effectively the same car. But just the development and the increase in stability and aerodynamic performance was mind-blowing. It was hard for me to fathom. And the car, and it was, so if I was ever going to make a return or do a wild card, it was without doubt that was the right time to do it, right at the end of the evolution of that car of the future car, because not that it was easy to drive, but it was much easier and more forgiving and more predictable than I ever remember driving at Bathurst ever before. Which means that you have to drive faster, and you drive harder, and the guys that were driving them full time, their belief and confidence in the cars were phenomenal, whereas I was still being a little bit shy on it. Sure. But still, to be able to drive the car up there and actually not be uncompetitive, it was testament to where the car is at. So now we flip to Gen 3, which has had a huge amount of that aerodynamic performance taken off the car, and so they don't produce anywhere near the downforce. So they're going to be very, very different, when they exit the cutting and come out across the top there through Reed Park, McPhillamy, and all those really, really high speed, limited kind of sort of grip areas. That's going to be a really interesting part to talk to the drivers about. And then the top speed of the cars, really we're looking at potentially them being maybe the fastest supercars we've seen in a straight line because of that lack of aerodynamic downforce. So there's a lot to unravel, where they end up shaping up as far as outright speed in comparison to last year and the previous cars. That's going to be something that I'm sure we'll overanalyze for the next 4 days.
I love it, mate. There's nothing better. The overanalyze are my two favourite words in sport. And I love Larko. We're great mates. And TD Tyre Degradation, I'm absolutely obsessed with it, mate. I pause. I read. How much of that?
You are sick, man.
I know several things excite me in a way that they shouldn't. But Tyre Degradation, does it come into play as much here as it did at Sandown?
Well, it didn't actually come into play at Sandown as much as I didn't. I sort of stayed away from it. But as much as it was focused on for the two and a bit days before the race started, it ended up not being as bad as what was anticipated, or predicted. So I would say everyone's going to be a little bit careful to get too carried away on tyre deg here, because we are using a softer tyre than we've ever used before. So some of the speed that's lost because of maybe the performance outright of the vehicle being so different might be gained with the increase in the available grip through the Dunlop soft tyre. So that's all up for for us to have a look at and see what happens, and
Sure.
which is exciting. It's good. I love that. I love new. I love seeing new, and seeing people work through the problems. But at this stage, too early to tell. And I think after Sandown, everyone's going to be a little bit more circumspect about getting too carried away on tyre deck.
Okay, Greg Murphy is with us, Bathurst, upcoming on Sunday. Just going back to what you're talking about top-end speed and things, how important is it to keep increasing fastest lap speed as opposed to having really contestable racing? Because I'm thinking, okay, anything upward of 200k, 280, then you're getting into the 300s. I mean, how goddamn fast do we need these cars to go? 400 would be bloody ridiculous. Even 320s, 330s. I mean, do we need that? Do we need them to go faster and faster and faster?
No, we don't. We absolutely don't. And that's not the intention with this car, was to do that. It's just that's one area that is having a consequence of the change in the design and as I say, the drag component and the aerodynamic components of the car. It's sort of suspected, and I think it's had some better top speeds in some other areas this year than what we had previously. But we're talking tiny margins. We're talking, at some tracks it might be a kilometre an hour. Here we might see a few kilometres an hour, but that's certainly not one of the targets that Gen 3 was supposed to be. It's just the consequence of the other changes, allowing that to be one of the pluses versus some other negatives in other areas. So, so the lap time this weekend will be interesting to see where it sits in comparison. It should be slower than I haven't seen anything. I'll talk to Larko about it. He's probably done some analysing around all that stuff to maybe get an idea of it. They're probably all saving that for the practice sessions starting up tomorrow, I would have thought.
Greg, since you were racing, and go back before, obviously when you were setting fastest laps and winning the damn thing and stuff like that, how much has it changed as a driver? What do you need now as a driver that perhaps you didn't then? Or what skills did you have then that perhaps aren't quite as relevant now? Given the changes in technology and all of that kind of stuff, do you need to have bigger forearms? I mean, do you need to be a little different body shape? Those are the things I'm asking.
Well, no, definitely not in respect of the physicality or what a driver, if we stood there back 20 years ago in 2003 and then compared what a driver looks like now, there'd be no difference whatsoever. Drivers are still doing the same things, just being as prepared as they possibly can. But and the techniques of they're always changing slightly. They're always evolving in different ways due to the development of the car and what a team and the engineers and all the propeller heads with all the big brain cells that come up with all the little tweaks and changes and how they look at data and then try to put that into what they do with the setup of the car and then what they want the driver to try and do and how to maximise speed and entry speed and braking performance. The changes have come from having all this information and so many more streams of data and sensors in the car, and then evolution of all the software and all that kind of stuff that's where the effort and the time is put in. But the teams are spending so much time looking at that information. These very, very clever individuals that basically live their lives, looking at a computer screen and creating programs and stuff to be able to analyse the information in different ways. So, and then trying to feed that back into, the car design and then getting the driver to then understand it and maybe try to find a different way or use a different technique to see if they can find a way to be faster than the next guy. So that stuff's become hugely important. But one thing that's outside the race car, although you're sitting in a virtual one, something that is a key differential now to when I was driving through my career is simulators. The best guys in the paddock, and probably nearly all the guys in the paddock are spending enormous amounts of time in the sim. So racing in their simulators against each other, on leagues, or setting up races and testing and practicing on racetracks. And using that side of it, which is a real mental side of it, right? And it's about consistency, and it's about repeatability and consistency, and they just spend so much time in it, and that's making a significant difference for those that are using that tool to try and find an edge over the competition. And the Shane Van Gisbergens, the Richie Stanoways, probably not the Jamie Whincup. Jamie Whincup's probably a guy that doesn't do that, right? Which says a lot about his ability. But Brody Kostecki, on all these pilots that are driving these cars at this high level spend a whole lot of time in simulators. And that's a big shift from where we were 10 and certainly 20, 30 years ago when they didn't even exist.
Are we ever going to see another Biffo like between you and Marcus? And why the hell not?
I hope so.
Come on, why not, mate? As
mate.
fans, we want it, man. We want to see two. I mean, we don't want to see any cars crashing or any kind of bollocks. Well, what we want to see is we want to see two drivers getting out and just going nuts on each other. That's what we want to see, don't we?
I know. I'm sick of seeing me and poor old Marcus going at it. But it's 18 years ago. Come on, let's find someone else. Take the bloody bat
and run with
someone
it.
Else
That's
run
it.
With it.
Yeah,
exactly. Couldn't agree more. We need some more Biff. Bring it back.
A couple of quick questions. The minutiae of just like, say for example, tell us when you're coming over. My favourite bit is when you're flying, over the Big Dipper or whatever it is, where you can't see the track and you're just seeing sky in front of you, right? How minute are the changes in your steering wheel? Like, is it a centimetre, half a centimetre? I mean, that's, because, all at home we're driving with this imaginary steering wheel. How fast do you move that thing? Is it millimetres?
Yeah, and it just incredibly controlled and, nothing sharp. It's very subliminal, obviously. I mean, again, it's that repeatability and again, the confidence that you've got in the vehicle and just being so comfortable with the car. These days when you are, and it just seems to just happen automatically. And then there's days when you're working a lot harder at it, depending on, how good the car is underneath you. But yeah, everything is so controlled and, about that individual section of racetrack and, and breaking it down and understanding the feel and feeling through the weight of the steering and the tyre on the road and picking your marks. I mean, just knowing where that car needs to be millimetre perfect every single lap. And Bathurst highlights that more than anywhere else. It's more, Bathurst in many parts of the track are a little bit more like a street circuit in that respect, concrete walls separating both sides and, you really are in a tunnel. So it's a little bit more like a street circuit in parts of it. And then, probably once you exit Forest Elbow and you're coming down Conrod Straight, even though it's a massive, big, long piece of road, the bottom of the racetrack is a little bit more of, it's a little bit more normal and open. So you treat that quite differently than the pit straight, the two corners, Murray's Corner and Hell Corner, up to the cutting. You treat that section of the circuit, a little bit differently. It's when you get to Griffiths Bend and then all the way to Forest Elbow is a section of circuit that you just don't find anywhere else, and that's where you've got to have your wits about you and have the respect of the place every single time. But last year having a drive around here again, which I never thought I'd do. It just highlighted what an amazing piece piece of road this is, and it, the history of it. It really is something phenomenal that we come back every year and we go on about it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's world class. World class. All right, dude. Thanks so much for your time, and I've always loved talking with you. Who wins it?
Van Gisbergen and Stanaway.